So guys, shoot, ask more questions, share your thoughts during the discussion. Before we start the discussion, which will be a panel discussion regarding business model around NoCode, I'd like to say a few words because I don't know where you guys stand today and how familiar we are with what NoCode is, what NoCode represents. But let me tell you a few words about that. So the promise of NoCode in today's world is basically to help people who don't know how to code, to actually be part of the digitalization that we see today. And everybody heard more and more about NoCode in the last couple of months, and I guess that's also the reason why some of you are here today. The reason why this is becoming a huge trend, it is because we're speaking about a huge paradigm shift where software development is becoming kind of just something that is democratized, that everybody can access to, right? And while we've seen that, one side effect that we're expecting is to see way more people starting their own venture, people automating their own work and scratching their own itch without, expecting to solve the world's biggest problem and go for millions of investments just to have the right development team to build the right solutions. And that's the promise of NoCode, make it more accessible. So while this is becoming something that is more accessible, the big question we're going to have to answer today is what is possible today and what business models are around us or in front of us with that topic. And before we start the discussion, I just would like to introduce really briefly to the panelists in our first panel discussion. Obviously, they will have to introduce themselves as well and say a lot more information about them. But I'm super happy to have Arpit in the room, who is product marketing at Prefect, but also the former head of growth at Integromat. I'm super happy to see you again. We had a chance to work together during the last conference.
Yeah.
And I really hope that you will tell us a few words about your side project
yes.
around NoCode as well and data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And I'll give you the word. I'll give you the mic in a couple of seconds. First, I'll go through the round. We have Schroeder, CEO at Slinger, and Slinger platform enables you basically to develop rapidly new applications and workflows that integrate external third parties and data. I'm pretty sure Grace will say a few words about Slinger as well.
Yeah. No. Oh, do you want me to do that now?
No, not really. Not now. We're just going to finish first the round with Christoph Rüger, who's here tonight. Thank you, Christoph, for being here. Founder and CEO of Synesty. And Christoph, we founded Synesty in 2010 to develop a cloud solution that simplifies the new challenges of automation, integration, and data exchange in e-commerce. So that was way before the topic or the word NoCode existed. So I think we really have like some great panelists tonight. I'll be your moderator for the entire evening, and we'll be moderating this panel discussion. I'm the co-founder of HuggyStudio and NoCode agency here in Switzerland that helps people, entrepreneurs and companies launch and everything. So, guys, could you do us a big favor? Could you please tell us a few words about yourself? How you came to discover NoCode, or what was the entry door to NoCode, and what do you do now with your respective company?
Yeah.
You want to start it? Arpit?
Yeah, I could go. Someone just wrote that please take your headset. There's a lot of echo. I don't know if it's coming from your side, Daniel, because it seems like there's some echo. So I just want to mention that. Cool. So I'll go. So I'm Arpit. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Until recently, I used to head growth at Integromat. So if you know about Integromat, you've probably seen me around. Now I'm doing basically two things. I'm working in product marketing with this company called Trifactor, which is an enterprise data transformation tool. And I also run a side project called Data-Led Academy, where I'm trying to essentially help folks without an engineering or a data background to learn more about data and how to work with data. So I'm a huge fan of no-code tools. I just think no-code just opens so many doors for you. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Grace, do you
Sure. So thanks for having me. I really enjoy these. I really enjoyed the last one we all had. I'm actually a psych major, and I started really on the business side of things and just found an attraction in business automation. And to date myself, actually in the 90s, there were even the beginnings of some no-code tools out there that citizen developers could use to interface data that was in a mainframe. And one that comes to mind is Saratoga Systems, which I was, as a mere mortal, able to take, combined with Alpha 4 database tools, and create a database and call center application for a new distribution model at Transamerica. So I've always sort of been interested in that. I went on to start a day trading firm and just got more entrenched in technology, and it culminated at Quest Communications, where part of my job was running a team of 40 people that manage quotas on spreadsheets. So I was thinking there has to be a way to build exactly what you need faster without going to the IT department and spending $7 million. And so I just formed that idea, and I got a little bit of funding for it. And it was before really there was even the name LowCode or NoCode, and started building this platform. And 2 code bases and 2 developer teams later, I found my CTO who really brought it to life. So we went down the path early on of trying to be no code. But we quickly found that customers need, it was just so much faster to include in our platform a way to execute certain functions with code versus trying to interface every single decision that somebody might want to make in building an app. So where we've come today is we're building products for people. And to somebody's question about COVID, our clients come to us and they say, you know what, we want to be in the COVID testing business. We have lab relationships. We want to build a platform that lets us offer to employers the ability to programmatically, schedule, test, track, report. We want to, be the Uber of testing, and we build those types of products for our clients. So it was our dream to be a lights out developer platform, and really our platform is built for developers. But what we found is that people want to move so quickly. They're like, we don't want to take the 30 days to get our developers up to speed. Can you guys just do it all for me? So we've sort of become a technology-centric services organization delivering applications on our platform.
Thanks so much, Grace.
Yeah.
Christoph.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, so I'm Christoph. I'm the CEO of Synesty, a no-code integration and cloud middleware platform. So basically our business is to connect different kind of API systems, and we have a strong focus on in e-commerce. So connecting ERPs with online shops, marketplaces, suppliers, that's our business, or the business of our customers, and we provide them a no-code platform, as it's called today. When we started like 10 years ago, there was not that word, but we, as Grace said, also had this in mind. I am coming from a software engineering background, and I wanted to get these things to be much simpler and faster. So in my old life, like changing a simple field in some report needed a whole deployment of servers and everything. And I said, okay, that should be just a few clicks, actually. And this was the goal 10 years ago. And basically what we have today is the tool we wished we had 10 years ago. So, that's my background. I will talk a little bit more about more e-commerce later in the fireside chat. So much about me so far.
So can we just all agree that building these things was a lot harder than we thought? Because when I conceived it, I was like, how hard could this really be? And then even as I went along and showed people, they were like, wow, we can't believe you did that. We tried to do it. We tried for 2 years.
To build something to be no code, you have to really think about hard and code. Because it's always, as you said, the problem of, I would say we are not only no-code, because we are low-code too. It's always the question of where you draw the line between these things. So there are shades, and so if the problem you're solving gets more complex, maybe code or a little bit of code is okay. So, and often it's just a little if-else function where it starts to be code. It's also a bit of a definition question.
So let's go right into that point, because by the way, I hope the echo is less present. Perfect.
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. Great. So when you say that, okay, no code and code, there's a line between it, but it's getting blurred basically. Many people, and I'll play the role of the hater. Many people would say like, yeah, no code is cool for things you want to build and throw away, because you cannot really build something with no code that is powerful. So now I would like to ask you directly to the panelists, what like use cases did you build or have you seen really literally built only with no code that you can come up with, that you have right now in mind? Do you have any?
Yeah, I could go. I mean, I've seen so many great solutions built absolutely without code. The most recent was like a job board, which one of my former colleagues at Integromat built, and he used Integromat as a backend. But that's just one of the many examples. Like people think, like I think one of the misconceptions is that people think no code is a complete replacement for code, which is obviously incorrect. Obviously we cannot build everything without code. You cannot build, let's say, this piece of software without code. It's going to be extremely hard. But then there are so many other things that you can build without code, and it's not just about building. I think you can also improve upon a lot of things without code. You can improve processes. You can like integrate stuff, and those things by itself is building stuff. You may not be building a product which is being used by hundreds of people, but you build a process or a tool or an engine which is powering a lot of your internal stuff, right? So I think no code is not just about building products. It's more about doing things faster, more efficiently, and without a lot of resources. And yeah,
I fully agree. I mean, there's a lot of different ways how to explain the same thing. Probably, I would say it's also, it enables you, it depends on where you are at the moment. If you just have an idea, those tools let you just play around, show your colleague or your friend what your idea is about. In the past, you would use pen and paper or sketchboard or whatever. And now you can like show them something which looks like it's a real thing. So, and it enables much more interesting discussions about the final solution. So whether or not you end up building that in code someday, but the tools are getting much better. So why not use it?
Absolutely.
We found exactly zero that could be accomplished with no code. And maybe that's just because of the types of customers that we are crashing into. But, if you think about reporting out on a lab report, one of our clients has a proprietary algorithm. They take raw genetic data and put a report out that gives some prediction around whether they're going to get age-related macular degenerative disease. And to take that raw genetic data and interpret it with their algorithm, we had to create an endpoint, put the algorithm in R, and run it all through there. There's no way that could have ever been accomplished with no code. And similarly, an early client we had a lot of data coming in from batches overnight. The only way to get the data out, old mainframe, had to come in. We had to transform it through the endpoint to populate the database every day. So I think to the extent that you're interacting with other systems that require data normalization, I don't know how you get away from code. And then, the triggers and event processing that might need to happen if other math is going on in the application is. So we've just found our way into that sort of complexity versus sort of where you can build it all on your platform, I think it's much easier to stick to the sort of a no-code approach. But where you're really having to normalize stuff from a bunch of other systems, I haven't found it possible.
And so we're almost like touching to the limitations, right, of no-code. And if you look at no-code, the other side, like not to the limitations, we'll discuss the limitations later on, but like where would you immediately start using no-code rather than code? Where does no-code really clearly wins?
Websites.
Yeah. Websites, automation, I think internal tools. I think automation is one of the best use cases, of course, besides building websites, but also like communities, content businesses, things where you're not really selling a piece of software. I think one of the easiest ways to understand is that if you're in the business of selling technology, then it's hard to do that without code. But if you're selling anything else, you can probably do that without code. So.
Yeah, so I would have said integration as well, but that's our day-to-day business. But if there's a tool which solves your problem, just use that. And nowadays there are tons of tools
for everything.
The website tools are having problems drawing the lines too. So if you look at Squarespace, I love Squarespace because I'm not a developer, and I find it it prevents me from committing design crimes. But they also, so 7.0 template, there's 7.0 has a developer mode where you can, sort of have free reign over a page, but 7.1 does not have a developer mode. So it's far more restrictive in terms of what you can do in interacting with other systems. So I think and I've asked them, look, are you going to add developer mode? Just because I don't want to start building stuff in 7.1 and then, sorry, you can't do it because there's no developer mode. And I think they're having problems drawing the lines too. And then you see like the next one past there is Webflow, which is much more complicated than Squarespace, but much more flexible from a developer perspective. So I believe they're more aimed at the developer persona than the designer persona and so forth.
Yeah, I mentioned the website example because I'm using that myself. I can code HTML if I want to. I'm not the best. There are a lot of better designers, but I have a building blocks and can create content fast, and that's like I don't want to do anything else. Yeah.
So right now there is a huge trend around no code. Right, many people are saying no code, and I even see like people flipping their startup into suddenly a no code startup, although there was something else before, because the trend is so visible. So I just want to ask you this question for you, Grace, because you mentioned like limitations of code and then of no code. Like, where do you see the kind of the separation between no code and low code? Because this is something that many people discuss again and again.
Yeah.
Would you mind explaining that?
Well, I think a big part of it is the humans, right? Are there humans sitting that even, and in some cases the answer is yes, and in some cases the answer is no. Even if you're in a no-code platform, you still have to have some sense for domain modeling, right? And some sense for how do I structure an application so that I'm not, continuing to refactor, I'm building in flexibility. And those are experiences that typically are in developers' heads. So I think if you're going down a no-code path, you have to have humans that think that way. They think from a data structural way, and they're not, because I've had people work for me that are like, well, maybe I should associate an email address with something. I'm like, no, why would you ever do that? But they don't think that way. And then you have to look at what is the complexity of the business problem I'm trying to solve. And it's really about interacting with other solutions. And, my favorite story is that Uber got started by stitching together Google. They didn't write a bunch of custom code. I mean, they did some, but they stitched together Google Maps, Twilio, and Braintree for payments. And that's how they got out of the gate. So I think with a low code, you can create more sort of robust product type platforms and have the flexibility to go whichever direction you find that you need to. Because as you know, when you launch something, that's just like, that's your flag, but you're going to be changing it a lot. and you won't run into the same walls with LowCode as with NoCode. And that's where we got, we've been sort of, I've raised $3.5 million in angel money along the way, but we've mostly been self-supporting for the last 3 or 4 years. And so we've had some clients that stretched us. So when, we talk about drawing the lines, we've tried to draw the lines around everything's got an API. You hit the save button, the entire shoot and match has an API, every event, every action, every listener. We didn't spend a lot of time in mobile UI tooling or any of that sort of stuff. We did spend a lot of time in auto-generating UI, so that if you add a field to your earlier point, boom, it shows up. And so it's been a choice. Now we're going to back in and add more NoCode to some of our listeners. But now that we know it works, we know it works. We're not sitting out there with a product that didn't work, which is the case for the first, I don't know about you guys, but we hurt a lot of customers our first 4 years. Like, we killed a bunch of customers the first 4 years because it didn't work. I asked my CTO, like, dude, can't we just get something out there that works? He's like, yeah, which part of the platform do you not want to work? The integrations piece, the events processing? And I was like, So, long answer. Sorry.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Very clear. One question for you guys, Christoph and Arpit. You've been working a lot with data. So there is this entire NoCode trend coming, and you see the most opportunities in data. And my question basically would be why?
Yeah, Christoph, you want to go or should I?
Yeah, go, Arpit. Go first.
Okay. Well, I like there's no simple answer to this, but I think data is fundamental to everything we do online. That's the fundamental bit. And if you're working with any no-code tool, whether you build a website or build an automation, you are essentially working with data, right? And the data can be in different forms, different formats. If you forget about the data and you just think that, okay, this tool will just help you do everything without understanding the basics, the data types, and how data is moving between tools, then you might create something, but you realize that it constantly breaks. So a simple example could be if you're building an integration on Integromat, you can build integration, but if you do not understand the data that's moving between, let's say, two tools. Let's say you're connecting MailChimp and HubSpot and you're moving data from here to there. If you don't ensure that the data types are the same, you'll end up losing data and you wouldn't even know why, So data is really like fundamental to everything that we do, especially with no-code tools. If you're building a web app, obviously data is so important. You have to have a database where you store your customer data, and you have to store data that you populate in your app. So I think, and also like a good understanding of the fundamentals of data enables you to work with all kinds of tools, because this is not understanding of data is like tool agnostic. No matter what tool you use, you have to eventually work with data. And then so that's one side of it, and then the other side is that if you're working for a large business, or if you've grown your business into a large business and you're generating a lot of data, then there's the aspect of storing data securely, transforming data to the right format before storing it, and of course analyzing the data. So I think data is pretty much everything. Whether you're doing something small, running a side project, or you're running a large company. So yeah, that would be my short answer.
Christoph, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So data and no code. What to add? I mean, today you read a lot of headlines like "data is the new gold" and stuff like that. So everything is an API. Everything can get you data. Everything wants to have your data. there's a lot of stuff which needs to happen in between to make that happen. So as Arpit said, you need to understand your data. Data is just a word, but the fields, the content actually matters, and the content can change. And even there are, to pick out one problem of data is there are so-called standards for certain formats or everything. But I always and the problem is people think, oh, there's a standard that everything should be easy, but the standard is just like the case. It does not describe the content. So all systems around the world have different content. So you need to, you need to be able to do something with the data, transform it, filter it, make it fit to your needs. So so you need the tools, and sometimes these things are easy to describe with words, but much harder to do with code. Yeah, you have to write a lot of code. That's a burden. So yeah, we need tools to do that, and that's why I think no-code tools and everything with data is a good fit. So I hope that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. Can you deep dive a little bit more into the role of Synesty in the no-code space, and how you see, because what you do is basically you connect existing tools together. So you don't give the tools for someone to build something from scratch, but you say, no, let's connect what's already out there. Can you explain a bit more the strategy behind that and your role within the no-code space as a company?
When we started, we had a strong, and we still have a strong e-commerce focus. So in my session later, I will explain a bit more detailed what the problems are. But yeah, in e-commerce, you have lots of moving parts. You have lots of different systems. I mean, probably all of the panelists here know that. And you need to integrate. So in e-commerce, you have suppliers, like you have lots of parties providing you data. You have to do something with. You have to get the data in your shop or whatever, and you have marketplaces. All systems have different requirements. So there's e-commerce can get very complex pretty quickly. But you also need business people. Like e-commerce is run by business people. So if you give them tools, they can even use to do these kinds of things without a programmer, or together with a programmer, even better, but do it faster. Then, that's what we do basically. So we're coming from an e-commerce background where everything was coded, everything was manually, lots of handwork and manual work. Even we get some clients who like do copy paste with Excel all the day long. So, and then with them together, we analyze, okay, what's the tasks you're doing manually, what's all your copy paste work, and then we start automating this. And this involves like talking to this API, getting data from there, combining it, push it somewhere else, store it in a database, send a report, send an email, and whatnot. So
I also think it's important that low-code and no-code can help address some automation for markets that aren't large enough for the huge software companies to go after them. We created an e-commerce site for an automation for vinyl manufacturing. And I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but typically the vinyl records are now surpassing CDs. They're surpassing pre-digital eras of volume in production. And so they've brought all these old presses out and they're firing them back up. Well, the order process looks like you go to a plant, you put the order in, you've got to identify what kind of jacket you want, what's the art on the jacket, what kind of sleeve you want, what kind of label you want. All these various piece parts that are then distributed out to all these other sub-vendors, and all of this stuff has to show up back at the plant in order to assemble a record and send it out. Nightmare, right? And then the plants have relationships with 3 or 4 different packaging vendors, so depending on what they want, and there's a lot of if-else's in that algorithm.
That's a good point, if-else.
Right? But for that, we created a custom interface in Webflow, and we're the back end with all of the logic in the database that's saying, you know what, if they choose this pressing plant, then these are the downstream vendors, and only show their products to as a selection path ends. And then the cool thing with other platforms our preference is to integrate and build core functionality on our stuff and integrate with all of the edge pieces. But now you can come to the table with something like Stripe Connect, and once that payment is made, all of the downstream vendors can have Stripe Connect accounts. They can also all get paid immediately their percentage of the piece parts, which is phenomenal. So you don't have, the little lady in the back with the 10 key, which is, by the way, how a lot of these record plants are operating. And all of the vendors nobody's getting stiffed. Everybody's got a lot of confidence in the process, and it's pretty cool. It did not cost our client that much money for us to build this.
It's amazing. I really didn't know that was a growing market. We'll just take a question from Matt, who is asking, how do you envision the use of no-code for large enterprise than startup scale-ups? So I don't know how much of an experience you guys have with enterprise or enterprise sales in regards to no-code.
There are so many use cases. Integromat, I could speak for Integromat. Integromat had a ton of, or still have a ton of enterprise customers who are using Integromat for all kinds of things, and that's just automation. Then there are tools that let you build internal tools, and that's so powerful, right? You can do. You don't have to wait for developers to build tools for you. Or let's talk about something like customer data platforms. They are also sort of no-code tools which empower marketers to access data, from all different sources and understand customer behavior, and then send that data to downstream services so that we can personalize customer experiences. So I would say that the use cases are endless. You just need to think about it in a way wherein you be able to do something using a tool without which you would otherwise require engineering support with. And I think, I could go on. I could talk about it all day.
So to come back to that, how do you see enterprise embracing no-code, more than use cases? Will they integrate no-code to the day-to-day work?
Yeah, it happens. We have one large enterprise which are using our tool right now because they have SAP in the back end, very large ship. Everything takes very long. So they said, okay, we want to start something with no code and build it fast, maybe call it a prototype or whatever. They just want to showcase it internally here. We have something working. We'll see what happens. Maybe they stick to us or they later build it in code directly to their SAP. But internally, they're using it to just do something, don't ask their IT, and make stuff work.
Great. Grace, what is your view on that?
Sorry, man, I was multitasking. What'd you say?
What is your view on how enterprises will or have embraced no-code, and how much of an integration of no-code itself will happen within large companies?
So this is one of the challenges that we have is I don't have a huge enterprise sales model. You're looking at the only non-developer in the company. If you look at the way most low-code platforms are going to market in the enterprise, like the OutSystems of the world, the Mendixes of the world, they're selling sort of an enterprise implementation where all of the developers will learn the platform and they will sort of take over and start building all their own internal stuff. That can be sometimes a 3-year sales cycle. So we're taking, the way I see our role is going at it from a sort of what is a new initiative that needs to get off the ground quickly in either a departmental or cross-departmental way, sort of like where are the innovators in the company who don't have time to the internal IT queue, which never, in the enterprise, it's really tough to get things off the ground. So I wonder about that the friction of, forcing an entire organization to adopt and train whether it's low code or no code. I don't know if that model continues to stick the way it has in the past.
Great, thank you guys. So we have 7 minutes left, and I just want to have like a larger kind of round like short last question, which would be about NoCode right now and the evolution of the market. For the people in the crowd who would like to start a business with NoCode, if each one of you could just like share the thoughts on where do people should start and how could this evolve into a profitable business using NoCode. Who feels confident enough to start?
I do.
Cool.
So, because we work with people that have these ideas and they don't know how to start, and they don't even have the skills to go the no-code route. It's a little dicey to say I'm going to build, knowing what we know about products now, right? So we got into the laboratory information management system space because as our client is doing COVID testing, we came to understand that labs, part of the problem is they don't have high throughput limbs. They don't have limbs that have APIs. So there's no way for them to take orders from all of these different locations and have them flow through the system without a human, like literally typing in 5,000 orders a day. In order to create a product, though, you have to know how you're going to sell it to the customer number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Our platform has very, very fine-grained permissions, so we can create multi-tenancy within an application, but putting those permissions in took us about 8 months to do it so that you could, down to the field level, govern who saw what, and that those same permissions would govern the API. So in the world of HIPAA compliance, also, what you want is to be able to spin out a dedicated instance of every, so you don't really want multi-tenancy. So you sort of have this cloning automation. So it's sort of like you have to pick the platform based on your best guess of what your deployment model is going to be. So it's not just how do I build it, it's how is it going to operate? Because what you don't want to do is become an expert at a certain platform and then go, you know what, this is never going to get me where I need to be. That said, if your goal is to prototype, show a proof of concept, get a couple of people using it, then picking the low-code application platform or no-code platform that you can figure out how to use the easiest is probably the path to go.
Yeah, I would say, so I would say, like, one shouldn't think about code or no code. They should focus on the problem they're trying to solve, and then try to illustrate the solution with whatever tools they have access to. Like even in the no code space, there are some really amazing tools, but they could be pretty expensive and you may not be able to access them. So I would say the focus should not be on code or no code, should be on the solution. And of course, find the quickest way to build a prototype using whatever resources you have access to. If you have your best friend as a developer, get their help. Or if you can afford to pay for good tools, get those tools. There is absolutely no dearth of like great tools in the market. There are a ton of communities. Hang out in those communities. Ask people how they build their projects. Especially bootstrappers. They're more open to sharing how they've done stuff than ever before. No large company is going to tell you how they got started, but people bootstrap in their business are more than happy to go hang out on indie hackers. You'll find your answers. You just have to I think one of the problems is that people expect to get all their answers in one go. I think that's impossible. You need to spend time, talk to people, and then figure out the best ways to fix things.
I definitely agree. In the end, you need to always think about you want to solve a problem for a customer. The customer doesn't really care how your solution is built. So in the last 10 years, nobody of our customers cared that our software is written in Java. Doesn't matter. And solutions change. So let's look at Twitter, how often they have rebuilt their whole platform because every 10 million more users, everything broke together. So they needed to reinvent what they did and throw away everything. So let's start thinking about solutions, how to make it easy for your customer or the potential customer to solve his problem or her problem. So talking about the MVP idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. We just have a final question because we have 2 more minutes from Diego. I think he wrote 2 questions that we'll take together. Diego Galindo, you wrote, what if you want to build an MVP? Wouldn't it be faster and cheaper if the founders had a good coding experience, like you mentioned, Arpit? And would it be better for pivoting because rapid decision-making is a big part of keeping a startup alive? I guess we would all agree, right, on that?
Yeah. Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether it be better or not, I don't know. If the founders have coding experience, it depends on what they're trying to build. Sometimes having coding experience can also be a problem because just because you can code, you want to like build the perfect solution, which is a sure recipe for disaster. I think, Jeff Bezos couldn't code, right? And he didn't care about building a perfect solution. I mean, he just
coders often tend to focus on details which are not very important in the beginning. So that could be a problem. It's not good or bad. So if you can code, could help to understand the problem. But understanding the problem is much.
Yeah, our clients don't. They don't code, and as it turns out, from a financial perspective, for the price of one full-time developer, because we're building on a low-code platform, it's like having 4, right? And so the developer's not sitting around going, "What code base should I use? What database should I use?" Should I use? They're like, no. They're right into the business problem, the business domain, and all they need is JavaScript, and the database scales the way the database scales, and integrations are handled the way the platform's designed to handle them, and so are data events and listeners. So is all of this other stuff, permissions, that important hard stuff is already there. And that's the nitpicky stuff that takes a long time.
Yeah,
those were the perfect closing words. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Arpit.